The following podcast may contain adult language and an abundance of salt, so get ready, nerds, because we're talking the little things. Welcome and thank you for listening to the Salty Nerd Podcast. I am your host, the Salty Nerd. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Denzel Washington, Rami Malek, and Jared Leto movie, The Little Things, that just came out on HBO Max. Denzel.
This
anyway,
thing was a snoozer.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. I am joined as always by my illustrious co-host, starting with the barbarian space Viking. What's up, Matt?
I'm inebriated right now.
Yeah.
You're going to need to be to talk about this.
Slurring my words.
It's okay. This whole movie was a slur.
No, I'm not that bad. I can't drink anymore though.
Yeah, take it easy.
It's like, wow. It's all good.
All right. I'm also joined by the ambassador of estrogen, Jude.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Hello.
And last but not least, author extraordinaire, Matthew Kiddish.
Hey, what's up?
What's up?
I'm
All
ready
right,
to
guys.
talk about Denzel.
Yeah. All right, guys. Like I said, we're going to be talking about the new HBO Max movie, The Little Things. Before we do, a quick word from our sponsors. All right, let's get into this movie. Who's doing the synopsis for this? Is it Jude?
Yes.
Jude's got her hand up. All right, Jude, take it away. What is the synopsis for The Little Things?
The Little Things from 2021 with a runtime of 2 hours and 7 minutes. Deke is a deputy in Kern County. His captain sends him to collect evidence from the LA Police Department where he used to work 5 years ago. While there, he gets involved with a case that reminds him of the case 5 years ago that ruined his life in LA. He teams up with the lead detective to work the case, stating that it's the little things you have to look for. The little things get you caught. While searching for clues, they begin to suspect that an appliance repairman is their guy. Deke leads Detective Baxter down a road of no return where they will do anything to get the evidence they need to prove their suspect is a killer.
I can't decide whether or not I should tame my review or just go full salty nerd on
Go
this.
full salty nerd.
This movie's a fucking bore. I've
It
seen
really
better
is.
episodes of Law and Order.
Yeah.
Like for the star-studded cast that we have, it was just like, who cares? It could have been anybody in this movie.
With the cast that they have for this movie, it should be way better.
Yeah.
I mean, Denzel, Rami Malek, and the Joker, dude. What Jared
Jared
Leto.
Leto.
He's is he not typecast now? Just the
but-
crazy homeless
But
bearded
he
man?
does it
Okay.
well. He does it well.
Yeah, but my personal theory is that the makeup that they did on him was not part of the production.
No.
He just showed up like that for filming.
Yeah.
He was like, this is how I'm going to play my weirdo character.
Yeah, well,
and
it
they were
works.
like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This
and
is-
he's got like a little pillow underneath his shirt to make him look fat.
Yeah. This is a movie to me that had it come out in a regular world.
Like
Pre-pandemic?
Pre-pandemic. This would have made $60 million the first weekend it was out on name recognition.
Yeah.
The following weekend, it would have dropped out of the top 10.
Do we know what the budget is?
I couldn't find anything on this.
Okay.
So I have a theory that it was in the $60 million range,
Okay.
just because the writer-director's kind of previous work. It's kind of like he does adult dramas.
Okay.
And so there's a cap to how much money you spend on that type of film because it's only going to make a certain amount of money. So
He's done 100 special victims units.
yeah, so my guess is it's in the $60 million range.
Yeah. The ingredients to this movie got Denzel Washington. Rami Malek is off an Oscar. He's hot potato
He's
right now.
definitely,
he's going to be the new villain for the new Bond movie that was supposed to come out already. Like, there's some name recognition. Jared Leto's a huge name.
Serious name recognition. here.
I'm not really on the Jared Leto fan wagon. There's like very few movies.
I've never liked him.
There's very few movies that I've seen him in that I really like. Like Lord of War, I think is the last one I can remember like really liking Jared Leto in a movie.
Yeah.
I didn't really like his Joker and stuff like that. So he was also in Blade Runner 2049.
He's also going to be
The new
Mobius.
Mobius. He's supposed to be the
living
new
vampire.
Oh, yeah. Well, that looks actually kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, he's a big name too. Like everything should have worked out. I think the script was just
It's a slow.
it's
a slow burn.
slow burn, which doesn't mean it's bad. I like slow burn movies sometimes, but there was never any moment where you're like, oh shit, like that's what the payoff was for.
I never had that part in this movie where it hooked me.
yeah.
You know, it's like I was done with this movie, and I started questioning stupid shit in the first 5 minutes of this movie.
Like what?
It's like, okay, the very first scene where the girl's driving down the road,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess it was Jared Leto came
Yeah.
up behind her in the car, and they have the whole little weird chase scene on the freeway. It's like, okay, first, why did you stop at that abandoned gas station?
Yes, thank you.
Oh God, I can't get in the door. You know, and then
Stay in the car.
and then why did you run out in the middle of the desert? It's like nothing.
Well, he took the keys, right? He took
No.
the keys out of her car.
It
Also,
didn't
she
make
got
any
she got
sense.
freaked out really quick. Like she was driving down the road with listening to her '90s pop tunes, and this car drives up beside her, passes her,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden she's having like a panic attack.
Yeah.
And you're just like, why is she like? I could understand if she was like a little bit nervous because of that, but she was like
Irrationally
instantly afraid for her
scared,
life.
yeah.
You guys have never been terrorized by a man on the highway before, and it shows.
So you're okay with the way she acted? You're like, that's completely
I didn't.
rational?
I didn't think that it was egregiously overacted.
Okay.
I have been in a car with another car full of men has been terrorizing me, and we have freaked out in the car like, oh shit, what do? We
Yeah.
need to get out of this situation. I've been in that car. She's also by herself.
Yeah.
So I can understand as a female character alone on a highway, no other cars around, and there's some guy chasing you in his car. I can understand her getting freaked out.
He wasn't really
100%.
chasing her though. Like,
Well, he was playing mind games
well,
with her.
well, no, he drove up behind her, then he passed her, and then like she passed him.
Well,
And
he
it-
stopped.
Yeah, he got like weird vibes.
It was.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying the scene on the road wasn't weird. What I have a problem is why she would stop at this closed down gas station to begin with.
Well, she saw a sign that was lit up and assumed that there would be a human there that could help her.
And then instead of getting back in her car and driving off, when she should have noticed immediately that the place was closed, she runs around the back and starts pounding on the windows, and then she runs out into the desert and passes out in front of the truck on the road. I don't know how far she ran.
My
it just
biggest
was weird. It didn't
my-
make any sense.
My biggest problem with this movie is that it's a serial killer movie that doesn't have anything to do with catching a serial killer.
Mhm.
It like, they sold this movie as a cops and robbers hunting down a brilliant serial killer type thing. Denzel Washington, he's a washed up cop. He's matching wits with this,
The new
Hot-
hotshot
yeah, the new
detective.
hot
Yeah.
shot, yeah.
and this movie is not about that.
No, it's
No.
not.
It's a weird character piece about
Bad cops covering up their mistakes.
about
Kind
guilt,
of,
about
yeah.
guilt, and
Mhm.
and basically the bad guys in this movie are Denzel and Rami Malek.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. It's a weird, like,
Very weird.
they were trying to say this message that Denzel covered up his mistake and it's haunted him for his whole life. And instead of trying to help the new hotshot detective not make the same mistake, he literally helps him make the same mistake.
Mhm.
At the end of the movie, you're like, okay, it was very anticlimactic.
Pretty
it was
much
just-
pushes him to make the same
Yeah.
mistake.
yeah.
And that was another issue I had. I mean, forget all the stupid, boring shit in the middle. And then in the last act, Rami Malek's character
Just goes with
gets
the
in the car with the serial killer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was totally like when that happened.
What?
I turned to Jude. I was like, "You got to be kidding!" me."
I know. I
This
said
is
the same
dumbest
thing.
shit I ever saw.
Yeah.
It was awful.
Yeah, I said the same thing. I'm like, why is he going along with this obviously manipulative serial killer's plan? Like, if you do what I tell you, I'll show you where I
Yeah.
had buried the body. Like,
No cop is going to do that.
you're a goddamn detective. Figure it out yourself.
Well, and I think the moral of the story is that Jared Leto's character was not the serial killer. Otherwise, there would have been evidence that Deke could have given to Baxter
Okay.
Yeah.
that he
So,
didn't have to buy.
Was he not actually the serial killer?
I don't think so.
Hold on.
I don't know.
We need to set the stage, otherwise people are going to be confused. when they're
Okay.
listening to us.
Go ahead.
So basically, Denzel Washington's character, what's his name?
Deke.
Deke.
Deacon.
So Denzel Washington's character was a homicide detective in the 80s. And he basically came across a situation where he found two bodies in this like area underneath a bridge committed by a serial killer. And when he was investigating the crime scene, he heard noises. He thought it was the killer. He shoots the person that was walking around out there. It turns out it was another girl. And so they covered up his killing of this girl by lumping her in with these two other victims. So they said there were 3 victims of the serial killer instead of 2.
Mm-hmm.
And the guilt over killing this girl and covering it up ate away at Zeke. He had like a heart attack. He lost his marriage. And he basically left the department to go to
Small town, just to get away from it all.
Small town, Kern County.
Yeah.
Kern County.
So, so he's kind of in exile out there. And then like one day in the 90s, he's sent back up to LA to drop off some evidence. And he finds a crime scene where there was a killing that was very similar to the investigation that he was looking into when he killed that girl. And so he teams up with this young hotshot, Rami Malek. And he starts looking into this, and he believes that he finds a suspect with Jared Leto's character. Now, it's kind of ambiguous because Jared Leto, he could be the serial killer, but he might also be an attention-seeking kind of just like crime buff.
Yeah.
And so like they're trying to find evidence on him, and they start going outside the boundaries of the law in order to do this. And eventually it leads to Rami Malek killing the guy, thinking that he's the killer. But in order to kind of assuage his guilt on the off chance that he's not, Denzel Washington frames Jared Leto as the killer, even though he knows that basically Rami Malek killed an innocent man and helped to cover it up.
Yeah.
So that's basically the story.
Yeah. I'll say, so I'm going to...
And it's as boring as
It's
it was listening to me.
It's a snooze, man.
Yeah, it's a snooze. And I'll say this, and I'm going to compare this to another movie only because when I was done watching this movie, HBO Max's app pulled up, recommended, if you like this, you might also like this.
Seven.
And they pull up Seven.
Yep.
Seven is a goddamn fantastic
Yeah.
masterpiece.
Amazing.
It's a thriller from start to finish. You
What's
got
in the box?
very interesting. The hook at the end, or I don't know what you call it. What do you call that big moment at the end?
The twist?
Kiddish?
The climax.
Is it a climax? I guess, yeah. Okay,
Or-
the
or
climax
twist.
at
Cinematic
Yeah.
O-face.
the end. Oh. Anyway, nobody's going to get that joke right now.
She gets around.
Wilson.
That big moment at the end of the movie, like, what's in the box? And it's Gwyneth Paltrow's head. Spoiler alert. There was no freaking moment like this, except for, I guess you were supposed to think like,
Well, the
Rami Malek killing him.
Red beret moment was supposed to be like the big reveal at the end.
It's called a beret. A beret is a hat.
You know,
Whatever.
You guys are hilarious.
That
And it's
annoyed me.
pronounced Leto. Jared Leto.
What's up, V? What annoyed you?
the whole thing at the end with the beret.
Oh, that he faked it to make him
Yeah.
feel better? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's messed up. It's just, I didn't like this movie. I didn't like the message it had.
I don't get the parallels with Seven, because like Jude was telling me that people were comparing it to Seven. I'm like, well, first of all, Seven was good.
Yeah.
Second of all, like this is nothing like Seven.
Not
Like
at all.
you can't compare these two movies to one another.
I'm really kind of shocked that somebody of Denzel's character would not be able to look at this script or whatever and go, we need to adjust some things here.
Well, apparently it was
it's
a
like-
good script. So basically, the writer-director John Lee Hancock, he originally wrote the screenplay 30 years ago,
Mhm.
and he wrote it for Steven Spielberg, because Steven Spielberg had commissioned him to make this movie with Warner Brothers that he had like some type of deal with. And John Lee Hancock, he's written like some movies that you guys would probably know about. He wrote A Perfect World, what do you call it? The Clint Eastwood movie,
Mhm.
The Garden of Good and Evil, The Alamo. He wrote The Blind Side,
Oh, okay.
and he also wrote Snow White and the Huntsman. And if you notice like a thread through all those, except maybe The Blind Side, is that they're all very ponderous and boring.
I actually need to, I've never seen Snow White and the Huntsman.
It's not very good.
No, it's not. But he also, like when he was directing, so like he directed The Blind Side, he directed The Alamo, he directed Saving Mr. Banks with Tom Hanks.
Oh,
That's what I'm thinking of, Tom Hanks. And his most
I
recent
have no
Yeah.
memory of this movie.
his most recent movie was The Highwaymen for Netflix.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was very,
with Kevin Costner.
that was
and-
pretty boring too.
yeah.
So this guy's boring.
Yeah, he's a
Is that what
boring
we're saying,
writer.
where he's a boring writer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Boring writer, boring director. Like he specializes in quote unquote adult dramas, and that's just basically code for very boring movies.
Boring movies.
Yeah, and so like he wrote this script 30 years ago, which is one of the weird reasons why it's set in the 90s, because when he wrote it, it was like 1993.
I honestly didn't mind that aspect of it. I like seeing the old 90s cop cars and them using like the street phones and stuff like that. What are they called again? I can't remember what they're called.
Payphones.
Payphones.
I get a little weirded out when we're seeing history pieces made in the 90s.
Yeah, 90s.
It's like, God damn it, man.
He's so old.
It makes me feel old.
But
It does.
but you know, so like, you know, he wrote it so long ago for Steven Spielberg, but Steven Spielberg was making Schindler's List at the time, and he's like, this is too dark for me. And so it went to Clint Eastwood, then Warren Beatty, then Danny DeVito. All these guys were going to direct it, and it kind of like went into turnaround at Warner Brothers. And after he did The Highwaymen, John Lee Hancock wanted to go back and do this movie because it had just been sitting on a shelf for a long time. And all of his filmmaking friends were like, this is your best script. Like, you should really get this made. So he went back to Warner Brothers, and he wanted to get the rights for the script in order to bring it to Netflix. And Warner Brothers was like, so everyone that had worked at Warner Brothers at the time he had written it had like left by now. And so they were like, oh, well, we got to read the script in order to figure out if like what we're letting go of. And so the people at Warner's read the script, and they were like, actually, this is really good. We want to make it. And he was like, really? Like, you know, you sure you don't want to just give it to me so I can go to Netflix? And they're like, no, we think we want to make it. And so Hancock had actually done some uncredited rewrites on the movies Safe House and Magnificent Seven, both of which Denzel had starred in. So he had a relationship with Denzel. And so he went to Denzel now that Warner Brothers had committed to wanting to make the movie. And he was like, hey, would you be interested in being in this movie for me to direct? And Denzel read the script, and he was like, yeah, I love the script. I want to make it with you. And the minute Denzel signed on, it was a greenlit picture. And this is actually, we should probably point out that this is one of those movies that was supposed to be a theatrical release. And Warner Brothers, because of the COVID stuff, decided to do it a streaming and theater release. So this movie is actually out in theaters right now. But it's also it's also premiering on HBO Max, and it'll be interesting to see like how well it does, because there wasn't really a big push for this movie. Like, I didn't see like a whole lot of advertising.
This is a movie that, it's like, I know I've always advocated, go to the movie theater and watch a movie. I would not have seen this in the movie theater. This is not in my wheelhouse. I would not have gone and seen this unless I got a free ticket. But it being on HBO Max made it much easier for me to swallow this thing.
This is one of those movies where I would have waited for it to come out on video to see it, because it just didn't look good. I felt like Rami Malek was also a terribly miscast.
I didn't buy him as the hot shot detective. He's a good actor. I like him in a lot of other stuff, but for this role, I
think he would have been better as Jared Leto's character.
I think he would have been a better villain.
Yes.
Yeah, like I think he would have brought more nuance to it. But like, I don't see him as like the hotshot young detective. Like, he just doesn't come across with.
I think he's just. When I was watching this with the wife, I go, he's just an odd dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's maybe why
we both said he doesn't come off as a detective. You know, this was a movie that my wife and I both wanted to watch because it looked good.
Mm-hmm.
So we waited till our day off together and watched it, and both of us were super bored with it. And we were both glad we didn't go to the theater to see this and waste $20. But yeah, it was.
Actually, I saw an interview with Hancock about this movie, and you know, you can tell when you're listening to him that he's very well versed in filmic language. Like, he's a smart, I guess, like, I don't want to call him a storyteller, but he's a smart filmmaker, I guess, in the sense that like he was talking about how every kind of serial killer thriller, it's like, you know, you introduce the killings, then you have like the second act is full of clues and red herrings and investigation, and the third act, it always comes down to the cop chasing down the killer and, you know, having a final showdown and shooting him. And he was like, and that just bores me. And so I wanted to do something different. And so
I wanted to do the kind of movie that bores you from the beginning.
It's like, I want to do a movie where we don't get to see the guy who we think is the villain until halfway through the movie, and you just don't care.
Well, that worked in Seven, right? We don't see Kevin Spacey
I mean, like, when it comes to serial killer movies, the minute you reveal the serial killer is the minute that he loses all of his mystique. So either you do it very early on, so you can kind of see him, kind of like a Dexter situation where you can see him outsmarting the cops, or you wait until the very last minute to reveal who it really is. Mm-hmm. And I could appreciate Hancock wanting to do something different, because like he obviously knew the typical thriller structure, and he was like, I want to play with it a little bit. But if you're going to break the rules and play with it, you have to make sure that you do it in a entertaining and interesting way. And this movie is not entertaining or interesting to me.
No, it's very dull. And even like you were talking about red herrings and clues during the second act, like I try to really kind of pick up on the little things, right? They kind of drop hints about, and you guys need to correct me if I'm wrong, but There was a moment where Denzel was like, what was the victim's last meal? And he's like, roast beef. And he's like, it's the little things, like wink, wink, like heavy nod. Did that ever come up again?
Yeah, because
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say Jared Leto, when Denzel was tailing him, he would go to this place that sold roast beef sandwiches, and he'd get those sandwiches and give them out to hookers on the street. And,
So it did pay off then.
And he also went into like a grocery store
mean-
that had a sign that said fresh roast beef.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, forgiven then. Because
I don't know that you can necessarily say that that was a payoff. It just, they mentioned roast beef again later on.
well, I mean, if it's something that character is known for doing, then I consider that to be.
But there were other things, like for
roast beef.
instance, like his like the type of beer that he drinks.
Yes.
They-
yeah.
There were cans of that
Bush.
beer in one of the victims, apartments.
Refrigerators. Yeah.
He was the guy who went out on the call to fix the refrigerator. So there were a lot of clues that suggest that he was the killer, but then there were a lot of things to suggest that he wasn't. And they never, like the killer is never revealed in this movie. In fact, he's kind of forgotten,
Yeah.
which makes it like a very kind of crappy serial killer movie.
Yeah.
See, like, that's where I go back to the beret. Because if they had left that as the ending with the red beret,
Mm-hmm.
I would have been happy. It's like, oh, he was the right guy all along.
Yeah. But then
But instead,
they undercut it.
they undercut it. And I ended this movie just thinking that the cops were pieces of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's
I know exactly what you mean. Because that's
so
exactly the same thing.
I was a little pissed off
yeah.
when he throws the package of barrettes into the
Into the fire.
miraculous burning barrel of everything.
He threw a metal box in the
Yeah.
fire like it was going to go away.
It was like, it's like I had a burning barrel on the ranch when we grew up. I had to empty all kinds of shit out of that.
yeah.
That didn't burn.
Yeah,
but
As
yeah.
far as the cop thing goes, I'm 100% with you. Like when I
Yeah.
watch that, I'm like, they first reveal like, oh, there's the red beret. I'm like, oh, okay.
Perfect
so
ending. Perfect ending.
It was him. They were right. They were
Yeah.
justified
Yeah.
in killing him. Okay, I get it. But then like 3 seconds later, we show that Denzel was the one
They
who
ruined it.
planted it. So
Yeah.
he's just being a
He's a
Yeah.
piece. He's a dirty cop.
He's a dirty cop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bad cop.
my biggest problem with this movie was we touched on it before, Rami Malek getting into a car with his
Oh,
prime
yeah.
suspect. like
0 cents.
Yeah.
They-
like when that was happening, I was like, don't do it. This is so stupid.
Don't.
And he
Don't
takes him
do
out
it.
into the middle of nowhere and he's like, she's right there. Just start digging a hole.
Oh my God.
And there's obviously not been a hole dug there
Yeah,
ever. And
yeah.
then you flash forward like 2 hours later and there's like 15 holes where
Yeah,
he kept
he
like
just
messing
goes-
with him.
Yeah.
Like after the second hole,
I would have shot him.
we're done, dude.
Yeah.
I
We're
think
done.
the real killer was probably the little dude that shot himself.
The guy who ate the 12 gauge.
Yeah.
I kind of, I don't know if I should say this. I kind of felt bad for him because he got harassed by this cop who we all know is a dirty, cop,
Yeah.
right? He gets harassed. He says like, dude, it was a mistake. I was drunk. I took a piss somewhere.
And
They
then-
labeled me, and he's been harassed for all these years. He gets like almost framed for this murder, and he offs himself.
I don't know, man.
I was like, that's a sad story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's obvious now, like at the end of the movie, when you know what you know about like Denzel Washington was the one who actually killed Mary, what's her name?
Yeah.
And so he's obviously messing with this guy, saying, hey, what do you know about Mary? What's her
Yeah.
name? And even if he was that killer, he knows he didn't kill her.
Yeah. What a
Yeah.
dick.
Yeah.
You know, the bottom line for me is this movie is boring and a lot of it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And the payoff at the end is bullshit. It
Yeah.
it's not good. And it did not leave me with any kind of good feeling that I just wasted 2 hours of my life watching this snooze bore fest. And I kind of think a little bit less of these actors now that they were in this thing.
Yeah.
You know what this
You
movie
know,
is?
it's not good.
This is a film snob movie. This is one of those
Maybe.
movies where you watch it and you act like you act-
Intelligent.
you act like you like it to come off as smart. You're like, oh, I appreciated this movie, and like in that interview that I saw with Hancock, like the guy who was interviewing, he was from Collider Video, and he was just like gushing all over him. I'm like, this is the guy that pretends he likes the movie because he knows it's going to make him look smart,
Yeah.
and that's what this movie is made for. This is not like a general audience pleaser. This is not something.
Do you guys think in normal, like pre-pandemic, this would be like an Oscar bait movie?
No.
No.
Okay.
Like I said earlier, I think this movie would make its budget back on an opening weekend
And then that's
on
it.
star power, and then the next week's box office would tank like Niagara Falls.
It really reminds me of a Clint Eastwood style movie, like how Clint Eastwood makes these very like kind of slow plotting, not high concept films. Where
Yeah, but I like his movies. Like Mule? You're talking about Mule?
I'm talking about every Clint Eastwood movie.
Gran
you know.
Torino. Like those are all great movies though.
I'm not talking about the quality. I'm just talking about like it's the style.
Okay, yeah.
It's
they're-
very
they're
deliberate.
kind
It's
of
very slow.
Plotting and
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And that can work sometimes, but it doesn't work with this movie.
I agree. All right, guys. I know we kind of already talked about our final thoughts, but let's give this movie a rating, star, or whatever. Jude, what do you got for us?
I think this is a 1-star crap fest for me.
Wow.
I wanted to like it.
Mhm.
I think that if I didn't know anything about this going in. And I think that if I had seen a preview for it and somebody gave me a free ticket, I probably would have given it
Can
away.
we ask this question to you?
Sure.
It was kind of nice not knowing anything about this movie going in, right?
Yeah.
However,
However, it made me excited once I started watching it to be like, ooh, I wonder
Yeah.
if. And then, like, the whole thing with the opening scene, I was like, what if the twist is that she's the bad guy and he's been hunting her and he's a cop? And then we don't see any of those people for the rest of the movie.
it's I guess what I'm trying to say is it's nice watching a movie on this podcast that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean? It's just
However,
having some new material.
There is a
to
sense
see
of
is good.
security with
Yeah.
watching things that you have
Yeah.
already seen before that you know whether or not you're going to like them or not. With this, it was just such a disappointment that I was pissed. And
Yeah.
I kept trying to make it make sense to myself. Like I rewound the end looking for something that made more sense. I was like, what if?
Like a redeemable
Yeah,
quality.
because I was like, what if that blue car from the beginning, because we know that was the serial killer, and then we never see that car again for the rest of the movie. I was like, what if that blue car is somewhere on Deke's property and he's the killer? Nope. And then I rewound all the way to the beginning and watched the beginning again to see if I could make the guy from the beginning, if I could turn him into Jared Leto. And that's obviously not Jared Leto that's stalking this girl. And it's not the same car.
You gave it way too much thought, Jude.
I was just like, God damn it. This movie sucked more of my energy out of it. 1-star crap fest.
All right. Vader, same?
Yeah.
Yeah.
1-star crap fest. I think so. I was bored.
All right, Wonder Twin.
And I wasn't happy with the payoff. It made me feel, like I said earlier, kind of annoyed and pissed off.
Yeah. All right.
And sorry,
No, go ahead.
back to me. And there's that whole scene in like the middle of the movie where the Undertaker morgue lady is talking to Denzel about the thing that we did. And you're waiting for that to be like something good. And then it turns out what they did was she helped him cover up
a murder.
like, yeah, I mean, minimum a manslaughter.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, you're a
You're a dirty
dirtbag
guy.
too.
Yeah, they're all dirty
they're
cops.
all dirty.
So, like, the main characters of this movie, turns out the story is that they're just shitty. And that's what this movie is about. It really pissed me off.
Why did we have to meet the ex-wife? Why did we have to spend that 2 minutes with her?
Character development?
That did nothing for this movie.
Because they mentioned that he had one at one point.
So
Yeah.
what? So he had an ex-wife. We get it.
The murders broke his marriage.
We didn't have to meet her.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
You know what I mean? I don't know.
Also, like, you know, when he goes to that cheap motel and the guy's like, you know, you want to send up a girl to your room. And then like we see him up in bed and there's like this girl, it looks like she's sucking on his
Oh
feet.
my God. Yeah, that was weird.
And at first I was like, did he really get a hooker? And then it turns out like, oh no, it's the ghost of the girl he killed. And she's not sucking on his feet. She's just at the foot of his bed. And he's like looking at her like she's haunting him.
For a fraction of a second, I did actually think he had somebody sucking on his toes. And I was like, this movie went weird.
Yeah. The way it was framed was really strange.
Very strange. Like Quentin Tarantino foot fetish strange. All right. Yeah, I'm with you guys. 1-star crap fest.
Wow. 1-star crap fest.
Round the
Kadish,
table.
what are your final thoughts?
I'd agree. I'd give this no stars.
Ooh.
It's
You
just
just
like,
have to be different.
you know, like it's a movie that fails to deliver on its promise. It tries to play with the genre and it doesn't do it very well. I felt like the script was boring. I didn't find any of the characters sympathetic. I couldn't relate to any of the characters. I felt like Rami Malek was miscast. Jared Leto creeped me out every time he was on screen, and not in the way that you'd want the character to creep you out. It was just like he just looked like he was sick the entire time.
Was this before or after he goes on one of his 3-week-long
like starvation
silent sabbaticals into the desert?
I don't know. We're like Jared Leto. He's a well-known method actor, but like every time he was on screen, you'd get saying like, "What's wrong with his face?"
He looked like he had been in an accident and had facial reconstruction.
He had like
done.
sucked eyeballs in, and his face is all weird.
You know what he looked like?
Sorry,
he looked like one of.
Start again.
You know what he looked like? He looked like one of the zombies from that Comet movie that we watched.
Yeah, you're right. Night of the Comet, 1989, 1981. I can't remember. It doesn't matter.
1980s.
Anyway. Okay, well, that's it. That's our thoughts on The Little Things.
Yes, would not recommend this movie.
Yeah, none of us here at the
One-star
Salty Nerd Podcast. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Is that our thing now?
Yeah, it's our thing. For when we all agree that something is shitty. All right, guys, thanks for listening.
We've been doing that way too much lately.
I know, it sucks.
On these new movies, at least, right?
Yeah. This movie was so bad, you'd think it was a Netflix original.
Yeah.
You know?
Ooh,
Yeah.
burn.
Yeah.
Like, what was the last Netflix? Outside the Wire.
Yeah, Outside the Wire was bad.
Awful.
We all gave that a 1-star crap fest.
Jude kept saying like, if this is another Outside the Wire, I swear to God.
It is. It was.
Yeah,
I actually found Outside the Wire to be a lot more disappointing than this movie.
I did too.
Yeah,
Really?
It was just, so this one was what, like 2 hours, 2 hours and 7 minutes, I
Way
think?
too long.
It felt like a 2-hour movie.
Oh, okay.
Outside the Wire felt like a
7
7-hour
It
movie.
did.
And it was only an hour and 45
When
minutes.
is it going to end?
Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a fair point.
Yeah, but it's not a good sign that all of these original movies that are being released direct to streaming have so far all been like really bad.
Yeah.
It's like the studios know that these things are pieces of crap.
Well, these are like January movies that
Yeah.
they throw out there at theaters
It's
or
like-
they normally would. Like, this is the time period when they throw crappy movies out. Right now, it's
Give me-
February.
It's like I'm almost begging for some.
Dude, we're gonna get freaking Godzilla
Give me
versus Kong.
Captain Marvel. Godzilla,
You know what we
or
should have
something.
watched for today was Groundhog's Day. 'Cause
Is it?
it's
Is today?
Groundhog's
Is
Day.
it really?
Yeah.
It wouldn't come out until next
No.
week. Anyway,
we'll watch
okay.
We'll watch it next year.
Yeah. All right, guys, that's it for the podcast. Thanks for joining us. Real quick before we get out of here around the table, starting with the ambassador of estrogen, where can we find you on the socials?
You can find me at IamJujuju on Instagram and Twitter, or you can find me you can find me on my website at thevoiceofjude.com.
Right on. Thank you. And the Barbarian Space Viking, where can they find you?
You can find me on the social things at MattVader74, Twitter, Minds. I'm on YouTube as well. I'm migrating most of my gaming time to YouTube right now from Twitch.
Right on.
I like the platform a little bit better. So come hang out with me over there. We'll play some games.
Right on. And Matthew Kadish, where can they find you at?
You can find me on Twitter at Matthew Kadish, Kadish, and you can also find me on Amazon by going to kadishbooks.com. It'll take you right to my Amazon page, so you can check out my novels.
Right on. And I'm your host, the Salty Nerd. You can find me on Twitter at salty_nerd, and come talk about movies and pop culture and talk about how terrible this movie is. All right, guys, thanks for joining us, and have a good day.